to talk about growing up on the farm in Missouri and just about my childhood and kind of give you a broader picture of how I came to be where I am today, and the small town that I grew up in and the odds that were there on a little girl from a small town in Missouri with no money, making it in the music industry. So I thought I would start by reading a little bit from the memoir that I wrote. It's called Born to Fly. And Born to Fly is kind of my signature song. We wrote that song as like a short mini autobiography within a song about loving my family and loving the farm and my siblings and all that, but just knowing that I had to leave if I wanted to make it in country music, had to move to Nashville. So I had, grown up watching Coal Miner's Daughter and the movie Sweet Dreams about Patsy Cline and La Bamba and like all these movies about people who make it in the music industry. So that was eventually, as I became a preteen or whatever, all I thought about. And I just kind of knew that it was going to be a part of my life. But I thought I'd start out by reading you a little bit of the description of where I'm from. And then I'm going to tell you all about my childhood and how I ended up right here talking to you today. So chapter 1, Big Farmhouse on the Prairie. Drama has been a part of my life since my birth. I was not just a breech baby. I was trying to come out butt first. I mean, it's just so typical that I would do that. What an ass. My mom says that she had to walk the hallways of the hospital for hours to get me to turn the right way so I could enter this world. It's true. I've always wanted to be the center of attention. That is a great picture of how I have been my whole life and still am to this day. I actually love being the center of attention. It's how I was wired, but it's not like I'm a narcissist or anything. I just love to entertain people. I love to tell a good story, and I love to make people laugh and make people happy. It makes total sense that my mother put me on stage when I was 4 years old, and I've been entertaining people ever since. I'm a Midwestern girl. I grew up in New Franklin, Missouri, a middle American town with mostly conservative family values. It's one of those places where people work their entire lives, often with very little to show for it. My hometown sits in the center of the state, and it's a farming community of about 1,000 people. It still has 1,200 people. It's always had 1,200 people and probably always will. That population, I just said this, that population has hardly changed in 100 years, and that's no exaggeration. The land is rolling countryside and wooded hills covered in oaks, elms, and dogwood trees. Rivers and streams are everywhere. And then, of course, we have the great Missouri, North America's longest river, making its vast journey along 7 states until finding its end at the Mississippi River near St. Louis. Simply put, New Franklin is a gorgeous part of America. So my mother had a dream that she wanted to be a farmer and have a bunch of children and live this idyllic life in an old home that, would just be sort of our sanctuary. And my mom is such a go-getter and such an entrepreneur and hard worker. She used to tell me that when she was a little girl, she would mow people's yards to try to make money or offer to paint cabinets for people just to make a little extra money. So she's always been like that. And now she owns several properties in my hometown of New Franklin, Missouri, where, she rents them out. So it's just, she's in her 70s and she's still doing stuff like that. She never stops. And I definitely am so grateful that she raised us the way that she did, because we all learned this amazing work ethic. And to my mother, I think the worst thing that you could be called is lazy. She despised laziness and just thought it was a a terrible trait, maybe the worst trait for someone to have. And so, we were taught that. We heard that all the time growing up. And if we ever complained about, being bored, which how could you be bored on a 500-acre farm? If we ever complained about it, she would immediately send us outside to work or to do something. So we quickly learned not to complain. And, maybe we could catch an hour or so inside the house watching TV instead of being outside working on the farm. But my parents got married right out of high school. My dad was a year older than my mom. So right when my mother graduated high school, they got married. She immediately had my oldest brother, Jay. 2 or 3 years later, had my brother, Matt. 3 years later, had me. 4 years later, had Leslie. 16 months later, had Ashley. And then 8 years later, had Erin. And then 3 years later, had Alex. So there are 7 of us kids. And it was completely idyllic. When they got married, they lived in town in New Franklin. And that's such a funny thing when you grow up in a small town and you live out in the country and you farm, because it's kind of thought of as the kids who live in town. Like, for instance, in kindergarten, they would start their day of kindergarten at noon. And we would go from the farm in the morning until noon. And I don't know if they still do it that way, but they used to do it so that, the parents could have their children helping them at home on the farm. So many things were done for farming purposes. And sadly, there are so few family-owned farms these days. But that was my mother's dream. And so she and my dad bought this huge house up on a hill with this long, beautiful driveway. And the house was probably built in the late 1800s. And she remodeled it. She remodeled it in 70s style, which is kind of funny because the house should have been probably like all hardwood floors and, kind of taken back to its original state. But no one had lived in this house for a long time. And I think my mother just probably drove by it all the time and thought, I'm going to buy that house one day and I'm going to live in it. And I would imagine that was probably in 1960 or maybe the early 70s. It was probably quite inexpensive. So not that out of reach for her to buy that house, and started out with about 300 acres, and we kept buying more property around our farm. And we were typical Midwest farmers. We raised cattle and horses and hogs and wheat and soybeans and corn. And, we loved fall because that was harvest. And we would go and, watch all the farmers combine the wheat. It was just such an amazing way to grow up. And but when we first bought the house, I think I was about 2 or 3, or maybe even 4. But like I said, it had not been lived in a long time. So there was a lot of work to be done, a lot of remodeling. And my mom's really, really good at that stuff. And she's a great eye for decorating. And so because it hadn't been lived in a long time, there were black snakes everywhere, like literally infested with black snakes. And in the Midwest, there are black snakes everywhere, and they're just a long snake. But I mean, if they go unbothered, they'll grow up to 10 feet long, and they will bite you, but they're not poisonous. So that's the only thing good about a black snake. But we would see them hanging from the trees. We would always, grab the BB gun or a shotgun and shoot the black snakes dangling from the trees. I mean, it kind of sounds like a horror film, but it was just a part of, moving into an old home that hadn't been lived in a while, and clearing it up, cleaning it up. And there's so many snake stories. Like, we would keep a garden hoe on the porch that I played on when I told the story of me getting hit by a car. That was the side porch that I would play house around. And so there was always a garden hoe leaned up against the wall. So if you walked outside and there was a black snake, you would just chop its head off. And it didn't bother us in the least. I mean, I'm like 3, 4, 5 years old, like chopping the head off of snakes because we just had to get rid of them. And then we knew that once, we got rid of them and the snakes understood that there were people living there, they don't want to be around you either. So that all worked itself out. But there are some really funny stories. So as I said, my dad worked at the Columbia Daily Tribune. So he wasn't just a farmer. He also worked a full-time job. And I don't know when the man slept. He would work like a 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. shift and then come home, get home about 12 or 1, sleep a little bit, have to get up early and start farming. And then I know there was no time for a nap. And then he would get ready and go do his shift. So my dad was kind of a hippie. He grew up being a farmer, and that wasn't really what he wanted to do. And I think because my parents were so young when they were married, they didn't have the wherewithal to really discuss like, well, what do you want to do with your life? And what do you want to do with your life? And it was just like everybody got married, everybody started having kids, and that was great. But I think my dad would have chosen a few things differently. Like he loved to ride motorcycles. He loved fast cars. He loved airplanes. He always dreamed of getting his pilot's license, and he never did, unfortunately. So I guess you would say that he just sort of was so in love with my mother that he, followed her in what her dream was primarily and supported her in that. So they became farmers. And, like I said, she wanted a lot of kids. I think my father probably would have wanted just 1 or 2. And she was like, no, I want a huge family. And so it's like we had our own commune or something on the farm. And it was just beautiful. Every spring, all the flowers would bloom. And I, as I've said before, was such a tomboy. So I was always trying to keep up with my 2 older brothers and, do everything that they did. So if they got motorcycles, I had to have a motorcycle. If they rode horses, I had to ride horses. If they played sports, I was playing sports. But back to the snakes, there was this one story of my mom sitting down to use the restroom and looked up, and there was a black snake crawling down the wall right in front of her. And then one time my brother and I got home late from a show, and there was a black snake behind the refrigerator. We could hear it, and we woke our parents up, and my stepfather got a shotgun, and he came to the kitchen, and my mom was like, "You're not going to shoot the snake in the kitchen. It will destroy the kitchen." But just all this stuff. Well, when we first moved in, they had to clear out a bunch of bushes and trees, and they were basically landscaping and making the yard look beautiful. And there was an open well, and it wasn't like a water well. It was like a sewer, basically. And my mother, I think I had a big wheel, and I was just riding that all around, or a tricycle, riding it all around. And my parents were working. They were running a chainsaw and, just doing all the yard work. And my mother said, "Do not go anywhere near this hole. This is a hole that is, who knows how deep it was. But if you fall in this hole, you will die." And I was like, okay. And so I don't know if I've ever told you guys this, but my nickname growing up was Crisco because I was so flaky. And this is just another example of me being flaky. If you don't know what Crisco is, it's what you use to, make a pie crust, and it makes the pie crust flaky. Basically, they were making fun of me because, like, one time I watered an artificial Christmas tree, things like that. So on the tricycle, riding around, Mom said, "Stay away from this hole." So in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm going to stay away from the hole. I'm not going to ride towards the hole. But then I decided to try to ride the tricycle backwards. And of course, at 3 years old, I lost track of where I was and where the sewer well, hole, whatever you want to call it, was. And so I started riding my tricycle backwards, and I backed into the well and fell in the well. And again, it wasn't like beautiful, clean water springing from the earth. It was basically a hole full of shit. And I fell in it. My parents were running the chainsaw, so I was screaming, grabbing onto blades of grass, trying to hold myself up. I don't know where my brothers were. Sisters probably weren't born yet. Screaming, and thank God they turned the chainsaw off, heard me screaming, saw that I'd fallen in the well, ran over there and got me out. But I don't remember ever going under. I think I was able to keep myself up, like above, but it was so disgusting and so nasty and so dirty. And so my mom rushes me in the house, and she said she had to bathe me like 10 or 20 times to get me clean. So that was the first near-death experience, besides me trying to be born butt first and cause my mother all this pain and trauma and annoyance. And so, of course, it would be me that would ride my tricycle backwards and fall into the sewer full of stinky shit.
What was your mom's reaction? You're really young. Do you remember what your mom's reaction?
I remember my mother being really, really scared. I mean, I remember them both screaming, and, because it was so dangerous. Like I was on the verge of just, going under. If they had not turned off the chainsaw, they would have not heard me, and I would have drowned. So I remember them being very scared, very panicked, and just pulling me out and rushing me into the house, and stripping me naked and throwing me in the tub, and just, I have a memory of staying in the bathtub forever. And then what happened is they took me out of the tub, dried me off, put some jammies on me, and they probably started smelling me again. Like, she needs another because it was, imagine falling down. It's the equivalent of falling, like if you fell into a porta potty. It was like that. And I know that's so gross, but there's just so many of those stories. And then one thing that I left out in the story about me getting hit by a car was that the day before I got hit by a car, my brother Matt and we were very, very close. I would say we were best friends a lot of the time, even though I still felt that, it was like the two boys and the two girls younger than me, and I was always kind of alone. But when I could get Matt to play with me and hang out with me, it was marvelous. And so we had to hoe the weeds around this big shed that we had. And all of a sudden, Matt stood up and he kind of looked out in the pasture, and he was like, oh. And I said, what? And he was like, I just got the worst feeling. And I'm like, what? And he said, I just got the worst feeling that something terrible is going to happen to you. And I was like, stop it. And I started yelling for Mom because I thought he was teasing me and trying to scare me. And I'm like, Mom, Matt's teasing me, he's scaring me. And Matt's like, no, I'm not trying to scare you. I just had the most horrible feeling that something terrible is going to happen to you. And the very next day I got hit by a car. So I forgot to mention that in the accident episode, but yeah. And Matt, I used to tell this on stage all the time because he was my bass player forever until a few years ago. But we had so many Barbie dolls. Like, that was the one thing that we would always get for Christmas presents and birthday presents, was Barbies. And I had a Bionic Woman Barbie doll that I was so proud of. And so I think Matt had Superman, and I had the $6 Million Man, and I had Bionic Woman. And one day, for no reason, Matt got a pair of scissors and cut all of the hair off of my Bionic Woman Barbie doll for no reason. And so she just had this horrible, like, short, terrible haircut. And she lost all of her powers at that point. But I used to love to tell people that Matt loved to play with Barbie dolls. And then for a while, even on stage, he would keep a Barbie doll sitting on his amp so the crowd could see it. But we used to always say that we had like this special bond, and we always wanted to have superpowers because, everybody would get up on Saturday mornings early and watch Super Friends and all the cartoons. And our favorite thing to do was make a mayonnaise and potato chip sandwich on white bread first thing in the morning. And we probably didn't have soda, so I would imagine we would drink iced tea because my mother always had a pitcher of iced tea made. But yeah, we would have a potato chip mayonnaise white bread sandwich and watch all of our cartoons. And so we always wanted to have superpowers, and we used to tell ourselves that if we ever heard a ringing in our ears, that meant that the other one was in trouble. And to this day, if my ears ever ring, I'm like, something's wrong with Matt. I need to check on Matt and text him. So, but we just had so much fun. And again, I was talking to somebody yesterday that they were shocked that I had a Yamaha 80 motorcycle at 7 and 8 years old, but that's just, the way it was. I mean, I was just a little tomboy. We all had horses, so each of us had our own horse. Matt hates riding horses to this day. It's my favorite thing to do in the world. In fact, we just purchased a small farm, about 40 acres. And so now I'm in the process of looking for horses, buying horses, and doing all that so that when I get to the point where we have grandchildren, they have all that same stuff, because my children didn't get to grow up, on a farm with horses, all of that, because they were on the road with me all the time. My kids had a great childhood and upbringing, but this is definitely something that I want to bring back into our life, is the farm and the horses and the motorcycles and the four-wheelers and all that stuff. So one time we were all on this big trail ride, a family trail ride, and my dad had gotten off of his horse to let us all go through the gate. And when my brother Matt's horse was going through the gate, something spooked it and it ran away with him. And if you've ever been on a horse that has ran away, that's running away with you, it's terrifying because there's nothing you can do to get it to stop. So my dad jumped back on his horse. It was like we were in a Western, and he was like chasing Matt, and he finally threw Matt over, but we were like screaming, "Hold on to the saddle horn." Because the horse was flying. And my dad finally was able to catch up with him, throw my brother a rope to, make the horse running come to a stop. And Matt has never ridden since then, ever again. But I'm going to make him ride when I get all of my horses and my whole deal set up. And speaking of snakes, I have another story about my younger sister, Alex. She was at a bonfire party on another friend's piece of property, and she was about 15, I would say. And they were all sitting around the bonfire, kind of, sitting crisscross applesauce, and she leaned back and like something, she was like, "Ow." And so she thought maybe it was like a thorn bush, or she got bit by a bug or something. And she leaned back again, and the same thing happened again. And it was not a water moccasin. What's the other kind of snake? Copperhead. Yes. It was a copperhead that was literally just laying in the grass right behind her this whole time. They were having the party, and they were probably drinking beers and, doing the whole teenage thing. But she realized that she had gotten bit by a snake. So they took her to the hospital, Same thing as my car accident. The Boonville hospital said, we don't have, antivenom. We don't have anything to treat it. We're going to have to send her to Columbia. But for the whole time that she was there, somebody iced her finger, which is the exact wrong thing to do. And so her finger got frostbite. And so when they finally got her to the hospital in Columbia, the first thing that they did was do leech therapy. So they have actual leeches in these jars, and they go get them, take them out, and the nurses are like, yeah, and they would take it out, put it on her finger. The leeches would just suck all the blood out or whatever, the poison, and get like super thick and fat and just fall on the floor and like crawl away. Like, I can't believe they still do that, but it worked. And well, it did and it didn't. Whoever it was that put ice on her finger, they probably should have sued that hospital, because she ended up having to lose her finger because she got gangrene on the finger that they iced. So if you get bitten by a snake, do not ice, because what it does is it holds the venom right there where the bite is. So don't ice your finger if you get bitten by a snake. These are just great lessons from Sarah Evans today. Let me ask my brother real quick, what's a story I could tell? Are you busy just for like 2 seconds?
I am not busy.
Okay.
Perfect timing.
You are on the podcast. I want you, I've got you on speaker, and I've been talking about all the snake stories on the farm and how I fell in the well. And of course I went, watered the fake Christmas tree. And I'm talking about how you had the premonition where you said, I had a terrible feeling something bad's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
Okay. So we decided it would be fun if we called you out of the blue and you told them a story about me, just anything you can think of from childhood or about us.
God.
I told them that you cut the Barbie's hair off.
I did do that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did you tell him it was summertime and she really appreciated it?
No, I forgot to tell them that. I said she lost all of her powers though.
Yeah, she did.
She did. And I talked about our white bread, mayonnaise, potato chip sandwiches when we would get up and watch cartoons.
Yep. Yeah, if Dad didn't bring home donuts, then we did that.
That's right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what we did?
Yeah, he would bring home donut holes, which they really weren't holes. They were balls, but they called them holes.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly, because, yeah.
It makes no sense. I'm going to have you and KK on the podcast officially sitting here with me when we tell the bad story, the airplane story.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I found the video that I took as we were boarding the plane.
Oh my God. We will have to play that on the podcast. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was like, why are you filming? Only people who film die, or only people who die film, or something like that.
It's super eerie. It's creepy because it's in the dark. You can't really see anything, but obviously you can hear me speaking. Mm-hmm. And I'm asking the pilots questions about what kind of plane it is. And then Kathy's talking about where she wants to sit and all this stuff. And it could have been my farewell video for sure. Incredibly,
incredibly eerie. That is so.
It's very strange.
So what would you like the fans to know about me that they don't know? Like, what was I like as a kid? Was I always a dork, or was I sometimes cool?
And Matt, has her spatial awareness always been as bad as it seems like it is?
My spatial awareness?
Yeah, you backed into a well. Every story you've told where you almost died.
Yeah, I have no spatial awareness. That is so true.
I don't think it's that. I think you just liked living on the edge.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think you were like, okay, what's the most dangerous thing I could possibly do?
Right.
I'll do that.
Yeah, because Mom didn't say don't ride backwards. She said don't go near the well. Well,
right.
You've got to be very specific with me.
That's true.
Yeah.
You're very good at following specific directions and instructions.
Matt, we should tell them about the time that we moved, Matt and I moved to Nashville together. We each saved $1,000 and we were, going to make it in the music industry, which we did. And Matt is revered in Nashville as one of the best bass players. And we got this horrible apartment at Briley Parkway. And do you remember the little girl that was left with us?
Oh yeah, her mom was a stripper or pole dancer or something. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she didn't know us from Adam, but she for some reason trusted us to leave her daughter with us, and she would go work. And she would spend the night. And
yeah,
I don't know how long she was there the longest time, but it was a couple of days at least.
Yes, like a 3-year-old little toddler. Yeah,
it was. Looking back on it, it was bizarre at the time, but it's just ultra bizarre now. She for whatever reason, she knew that her daughter would be safe with us.
Yeah, she did. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was before cell phones, so we couldn't.
Yeah, for sure.
Reach her. We had no idea where she was, and we had her daughter. For like 3 days.
I remember that little apartment, and I remember the layout and where they lived, and her bringing her to our house and stuff. It was just bizarre.
It is bizarre. It is crazy. And now you're my real estate agent.
I know, it's bizarre.
I know.
So, Ryan Joseph, who plays fiddle, right?
Yes.
Played with us. So he's a professor at Belmont, and he had me speak to his class today about life in Nashville. And it's funny that we're talking about these stories because I just talked about them about an hour ago.
That is so weird.
I know. It's funny. I'm twice a week. I hardly ever get asked to talk about our experiences in Nashville, but today I've done it twice. I'm doing it twice.
That is so bizarre. Okay, hold on.
It's
She has
weird.
she's a question for you.
I have one more, Matt. Okay, so can you tell a really funny story about you guys on stage together, whether it was a weird blooper moment on stage or a funny story on stage or just something that happened kind of behind the scenes that maybe no one knew that was at the show, but you guys knew?
You could tell about when I said in the microphone, "Look at that fat lady."
Yeah.
Because I already told the peeing in the boots story. But you could also tell the peeing in the boots story from your point of view.
Yeah.
Do that.
Well, there was a common theme of, bathroom issues at these nursing homes that we played at.
Yes.
And did you tell about the lady that we saw poop on the floor?
No, tell them.
Okay, so we're on stage and we look out, and I mean no disrespect to the elderly.
People our age.
Right. I mean no self-disrespect. No, but we're it doesn't smell good in nursing homes anyway.
Right.
That's a whole other story. The nursing homes are pitiful. But,
They are.
So we're on stage, we're looking out, and they bring this lady into the room, and she's in a wheelchair. And which I haven't really thought about that until right now, but instead of positioning her to face the stage, they turned her sideways.
Exactly.
Have you ever thought about that aspect of this?
No, never.
I hadn't either, not to now, which plays into the story. But so instead of, having her face us to watch and listen and everything, she's sideways and she's kind of slumped over, and poor lady,
Yeah.
it was awful. But we're on stage. I don't know how old we are, but we're not old enough to experience this. Mm-hmm. She went to the bathroom number 2 while she was sitting there in the wheelchair. And I just remember it came out the back of the wheelchair and just plop, plop, plop on the floor.
I remember it vividly.
Yeah. And it was horrible. We were just in shock.
And we were kids, so of course we were gonna kind of laugh. We were kids, and
yeah,
and also we could smell it. Not to be rude, but it was very, very bad.
Oh yeah, it was not a good experience at all. And I don't think, fortunately for her, I don't think she knew what was going on.
Right.
I think she just was unaware of what was happening, obviously. But for us, it left a lasting impression. And
we will, never forget it Okay, and
Yeah.
then the other nursing home.
What? Oh, with your choice of gift.
Oh, I forgot about that. Tell that one. That is so good.
Yeah, so it was actually at the Frederick Hotel in Boonville, which is still there. We do this show, and it's for like a doll collectors convention or something like that. So we do the show, finish the show, and the director of the event or whatever, she comes up, and she's talking to you, and she's like, "Thank you so much for coming. You sounded great. I was just so glad you could come. And as a token of our appreciation, we're gonna let you walk over to this huge, assortment of
Dolls.
expensive collectors, precious, one of a kind dolls, and you
Like
get to pick-
really, really nice ones and big. Some of
yeah.
them were huge.
Yeah, they were kind of scary, like you would expect from dolls, and I'm sure one or two had their one eye closed and the other. So you walk over and you're like very sheepishly looking these dolls over, and I don't know what they were worth, but they were worth some money. Like,
Yeah.
we, especially as kids, obviously, we had no money. Our family had no money. And so you walked over and you bent down and you picked up the tiniest, most useless, worthless doll of all of them. And it also had like 75 like pieces that go with it, like,
Shoes,
brushes,
little purses.
yeah, and bottles and all this stuff. And I was like, seriously? You could have picked a winner and we would have sold it and made some money.
Why do and remember, by the time we got home, all the pieces were lost. Every single
yeah.
one.
Yeah, they were, on the floorboard underneath the seats of the car. It probably had been thrown out the window. We were all fighting or something probably.
Oh, yeah. And you guys were all teasing me about picking that doll. Like, even mom.
Yeah.
But, like, mom should have, guided me and been like, no, you don't want that. Pick a big, really nice one. But instead, she just let me in my stupid brain as a kid. I was probably, how old would you say I was then? 7 or 8?
No, probably, I was going to say 6 or 7.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm old enough to perform an entire show with a band, but I'm still a kid. So, like, somebody help me pick a doll. But yeah, I don't know why I did it. I remember in my mind thinking, I'm going to do the opposite of what most people would do. And
yeah, I'm gonna show them.
I'm going to pick this cute little doll. And I just do stuff like that all the time, still to this day. Okay, well, thank you so much. This is going to be a fun and funny episode. And then we're still waiting to hear, so I'll let you know about the other thing.
Thanks for listening to Diving in Deep with Sara Evans.
Yay, that was awesome. That's my brother. I've been talking about this whole time. Okay, love you so much.
Love you so much too. Have a good time.
Okay.
And I look forward to doing the episode.
Thank you. Love you.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, he's so sweet.